Hello and welcome again to On the Marquee. I'm John Ballantyne, your host, and I want to welcome our sponsors for today, Joe and Carrie Malis and the Photo Place in Austin Town. Now our guest today really doesn't need an introduction. Almost all of you, if not all of you, know her, have followed her career from her early days at the Playhouse, and I want to welcome Maureen Collins.
Well,
Maureen,
this is delightful.
how are you?
I'm really good. Thanks,
Good.
Jack. This is
Good to see
awesome.
you. Now, as I said, everybody knows you. Everybody knows your recent theater career. Take us back to how did all this get started for you in theater?
Well, right in this building, which is really, sometimes I walk in here and just tears start flowing. I can't explain it, just because I fell in love with this place and the guy who was behind the office door.
Mm-hmm.
Bentley Lenhoff was like a second father to me.
He was a great guy.
I was one of 8 children. Now, in the early days when I started, there was only 6 of us, and the other 2 were still yet to come. And my father worked down the street on Glenwood at the Empire Club.
Okay.
Now, this was a bar on the corner of Glenwood and where Indianola meets it, like by Courtney's. That was like a spot where we all went.
Right.
And people like Tom Holden, Don Gardner would come in after their newscasts and sit and talk to my dad and have a beer or 2. And I would be here waiting because he would pick me up to go home on the way home. So many a night, Bentley Lenhoff and I sat sitting right outside, and him just saying, "So kid, your dad, where's he work?" Like, I don't think he could believe that this little kid, because I'm thinking I know I was single digits, maybe 9 when I started and did a show. And from that day, this man convinced me that I was gonna be a star. I am not kidding you. He would say things like, "Kid, you know, you're going to be fine." If every time I try out, I think he would go and talk to directors and say, "Put that kid in." I really believe that, because a lot of the shows I think I was too young to be in, but he'd say, "She got a big voice, put her in there." And the next thing you know, I'm under the bridge in Music Man singing so John Griffith would get the right key. It was just, these are the things that made me love this building. And like I was telling you earlier, I remember coming here always hoping to do 2 shows a year from the time I turned 10, and then I would do a show over at the Jewish temple that they ran. It was easy because I could do here and then there, and I just did 3 shows a year, loved it. And I wish I could remember everything. The thing I remember most is the people. Right. Like I said, Bentley just comes to my mind, and in the latter years of his life when he moved, I was still able to shoot him an email and get an answer where I knew he was sharp as a whip and remembered me, and he couldn't believe how I was still. I get very emotional thinking of Bentley, and now that the Playhouse is coming back and I have good friends who are behind the scenes making it happen, kids that I helped mentor, bring up through the ranks, it makes me so proud. And when I come to every show and sit up there and watch it coming back, I keep telling people, it reminds me of the glory days when I used to work with phenomenal actors, and they're the ones who gave me, the feeling that I could do this.
Well, you talk about Bentley. I mean, seeing the talent in you that he saw at 9 years old, and he's the one that turned down Barbra Streisand. So.
Oh my gosh, that is a good story. I remember that. So I got to feel really great about that, right? Oh man, yeah, Bentley was something else. And I'll tell you, a lot of the people behind the scenes, I'm remembering a musical director, Janice Aubrey,
I remember Janice,
who came and did a lot of things, and she was a real whippersnapper, and I loved her, a little haughty. And her husband did a lot of stuff too, Stu, and they would come in and they did parts, and she'd be sitting behind the piano, and she'd tell me, "Come over and try out." And I remember trying out for Oklahoma, my very first show, and I'm singing, and I believe back in those days I always sang something like "Getting to Know You" or something like that, just real big voice. And I remember this director, he was from New York, the Playhouse used to do it, and I'm sure he had family ties in the Valley because his last name was Lane, and there was Lane Funeral Home, so I'm sure they brought a guy back home. And he came in, and I remember him saying, "I hear an Ethel Merman up there." And I don't know if Bentley had told him that, because Bentley always used to say, "Oh, you're better than Ethel," that kind of thing, don't let him tell you that. But I always took that as a compliment, because Ethel, nobody sang with the kind of just excitement for being on stage. And that's kind of what I do. I don't rely on sounding great. I just rely on where's that music coming from. You know, it's just the love of performance and I've been doing what I love for 30 years.
That's great.
Jack, I mean, you can't get better than that.
Yeah, not people can say that.
No, a lot of people have to go through a life full of bad jobs and being miserable and waiting for that clock to turn to 5:30 to get out. And I've been so blessed, 30 years of doing this. Now I have very poor times, but that's okay, because I'm always going to have a roof over my head. My mother and father saw to that.
You mentioned some of the people that you had worked with on stage here. You've worked with some of the iconic Playhouse people. How did they help to influence your career?
Well, I'll tell you what. In the early days when I was a chorus person, you cannot leave a production like Oklahoma, the first one that comes to mind, and watch Dana Snyder in full out Ado Annie mode. I would be on the sidelines watching this woman. I mean, this was in the days when she was doing Kenley Players when she wasn't here, when she was choreographing in New York when she wasn't here, and they could get her to come home. And her and Janice Aubrey were good friends, so it was easy. Phenomenal. And then she could bring other people to the table that were great. You know, and I just sat there. I think people always made fun of me because I was just so overwhelmed by it, you know. And you can't be on stage with Lynn Nelson, for God's sakes, and not feel like, oh, I want to be so good like this. And she teases me now because she'll be like, oh, I can't remember, I can't do that, I can't do this. I go, Lynn, you can do anything. And her and Jean DiCaprio will do some of these, all of Neil Simon's best, and they do like a reader's theater for people, and I get to be a part of it as a singer a lot of times. And just the two of them, even with the script in their hand, are just, I aspired to be like them. You know, a lot of the big time gal singers and stuff that aspired me, I'm embarrassed because I'm looking at pictures around the room and saying, oh my gosh, yes, I worked with that woman, Arlene Ivan. I mean, yeah. She was phenomenal. She was. You know, this little gal who was also in Guys and Dolls, and then she also did the lead as Lori, was fantastic. And I don't remember her name now, but these were really, really good people. I never dreamt that I would rise to getting a leading role, you know, at some point, because I started when I was so young, and I really I never thought of myself as leading lady material until people like Paul Kimple and Sandy Van Such and people who came in to direct gave me a chance. They took a chance on me as a girl that was maybe too young to do things, but how is a young girl going to learn or get the experience if not at community theater? And so many times now with my association with the theater that casts people and works with people, so many times I stop myself and say, you know what? If you would have never gotten a chance, and I'll look at a kid and say, this kid needs to be with me. I want this kid. I want this to take this kid. You know, because life now for kids, I don't know, parents, it's a tough job.
It is.
I mean, my parents had 8 of us, but it didn't seem nearly as hard as these poor parents today, because we didn't have so many options, you know, of things to do. I just loved theater. That was my thing. So they brought me in, dropped me off, and let me do what I love to do, you know, and weren't afraid. And this whole area around here, there wasn't that. This was the heyday. Everybody was driving by and stopping in. You know, I remember when John Abbey, he was phenomenal. John Griffith, all the Johns that I got to work with and watch and just come to see in shows, and they all treated me like a star. So I try to treat everyone that I work with in all my workshops and the thousands of kids I've worked with over the years and been blessed to enrich their lives, and they all come back to me of how important I was to them. And that's, you can't get any better than that.
No, you can't.
You know, you really can't.
You cannot match.
I'd mentioned Paul Kimple. This was a guy who loved me so much that on, it must have been the week of Dolly opening, they had rented a Dolly costume for me, because there was really nothing in the archives up there that would fit me. And Paul was just so wonderful. When it came in, and the picture on the bar here is of that god-awful costume, and a wig that they actually put me in. And he saw me for the pictures and just said, that's it, no. And do you know, the night before I opened, I was up there and they were building a costume on me.
Oh my God.
That I didn't even know was gonna be, and I came in that next day, I was here maybe till 2 in the morning, And I came in around 6 and just started crying. He goes, "You gotta stop." And he made me go just get my hair red. He goes, "You're not wearing this wig." And I remember him talking with Bentley, "This is ridiculous, she's not wearing this." And there they were, 2 people building a costume on me till 2 o'clock in the morning. I went home and came back to see this beautiful dress. And he found me a cape that was just phenomenal. And I remember the cast going, "Wow, hello, Dolly." And I was like, "Thank you." He built like beautiful scenery for me. I really believe that. Every time I see those peacocks come out again, I go, those were for me. You know, because Paul Kimple, he loved me that much.
Well, Paul was great. Paul was great, and I want to talk about Dolly. I mean, you went right into Dolly, because every time we talk about Hello, Dolly, every time that show title comes up around here, you did the performance of Dolly Levi.
And everybody goes back to that and refers to
Oh, God, that's so touching, because I know they've done it a few times, and I've seen it, and there's been some great Dollies, but I was
bit about that experience.
It was, for me, it was kind of surreal. Like I said, Sandy Van Such was, when I went to YSU, I was going to YSU at the time, actually trying to get a degree in theater, which I never got. But just going between working all day and then going, and the school I worked for was sending me to school. And Sandy was my tech person for the theater department. She worked for Castronova at the time, and she was building sets while I was there. We met, hit it off immediately, and then the next thing I know, she's directing here when they were doing Dolly. This was the very first time, and I always tell kids, do not do this unless you don't have time to be in the chorus. It was the first time I was brave enough, because I was singing with a band that did weddings, made a lot of money on weekends. So to do a show, I was going to have to give that up for weekends, at least the 3 we used to do 3 full weekends for shows. And I was going to have to give that up and tell my band leader. So I said, you know what? I'm going to say I want to be Dolly or nothing. And I knew I was too young, but I'm auditioning for someone I love, so if anybody's going to give me a break, maybe she will.
True.
It was the very first and only time I ever did that. And it worked. And I got that part. And I was forever changed, to tell you the truth, because everybody treated me with such, like I belonged there, like Dolly belonged. And all the young people who were singing to me, the chorus was a lot of young guys that I had done stuff with for so many years. And just to see them being so thrilled, and all of them like pulling pranks and, you know, shooting the moon while I'm up there just to get me relaxed, and, you know, just learning that part. I mean, it's forever with me, and I've gotten to play it again as I get older, and I just still feel like I do it again. I keep teasing Jimmy McClellan. I said, now it's time you can be Horace and I'll be, and I keep teasing him. I'm telling you, I could do it again. Wouldn't it?
Stage. It would.
And Jimmy, he was my, I'm so bad with it, I can't remember, my dancing, I forget his name, Cornelius Hackle.
Cornelius.
He was my Cornelius when we did it for Easy Street. Here, it's a great story, my Cornelius was Bob Kozar, a very young Bob Kozar. And I'll never forget, we're dancing, and he twirls me, throws me right practically into the pit. I remember a great trumpet player, because they used to have the best players in the area down there, Andy Dominic. And I remember him like blowing the horn, dancing, and I almost like went in on him, and he was looking at me like, and then I just looked at the audience, and Dolly's allowed to do that. And have, you know, one of the other things with that, and it'll bring up another Playhouse favorite, was playing the part of Horace was another young guy from YSU. Sandy was taking a chance on both of us being these young people. Gary, I know, what was his name? Robinson was his name. And he quit the week before the show. For whatever reason, just wasn't feeling secure. Sandy didn't get a real good reason out of him, but it was over. Sandy gets none other than Joe Scarvell to come in and be my Horace. Now, if you know Joe, right, and that's in 1 week, trying to learn them all. Well, by the time we opened, the whole scene around the table where we're eating and I'm cutting his wings and everything, at one point he told the audience, just go for it, Dolly, because he didn't know what to say, and I'd be like, oh, let me do that, okay, and I'd do everything he was supposed to do. And as the show ended up, it was fabulous, but he called me Molly, Holly, Polly during the show. I think he called me Dolly maybe 3 or 4 times, because he was, you know, just like crazed that he was doing this so fast. But every time I see the guy, he'll say, "What's going on, Polly?" And he remembers. And on my cake that last day, they had a cake down here for us, and it said, "To Polly, Molly, Holly," all the names but Dolly. So, you know, that will forever be the show that made me finally believe that I was good enough.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because I had done Fiddler, and it was one where I did get a nice little juicy role, only because Donna Downey went down for the night. And I remember the cantor, Ehrlich, saying, "Well, we got to get somebody else to be Grandmother's Idol," and he was all in a flame. And he said, "Well, I think she knows it." So a couple of us girls tried it, but that was a lot of makeup and everything. And I remember being on stage behind a scrim, and all of my friends, David Gendry included, he was Mottle the tailor, and the music went ching, and David hit the cymbals, everything gone. You know what I mean? Like I just had like a Cindy Brady moment, like I can't do it. And I'm like, and you could hear the cantor out front, "Grandma, are you okay? Grandma, Grandma." And then he hit the cymbals again, and it all came back. And I was like, oh, thank God. So when I went off stage, I figured I'm never getting a part. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, how humiliating. And I remember that night, people saying to me, "No, you pulled through it." I mean, anybody else might have broken down. I remember telling my friends, "Couldn't one of you have said the line or help me?" And they're all like, "We wanted to." I'm like, "Well, thanks a lot," you know? And so I really was, that's what got me the most, that I was now being awarded a leading role after such a weak beginning coming in to save somebody, you know? So I just, I have to really remember back, and I tell kids that story, that, you know, the best of performers can have those moments.
Oh, sure.
And live theater, you're just like, even though I love it, it's scary, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That's the real adrenaline part of this, is doing it live, and just it's always should be different and fresh. I love that.
Exactly.
We get something on tape, it's nice to have, but man, every night being a different show, and your chemistry, I mean, you can't beat that.
Can't beat that. I need to take a quick break here. Okay. I want to thank again our sponsors for today, Joe and Terry Malis, and the Photo Place in Austin Town. Getting back to some more shows. I think I first worked with you in Brigadoon.
Oh, Bridge of Doom, we call it.
Bridge of Doom, or as a friend of mine in Pittsburgh calls it, Big Buffoon.
Right, well, that was another guy, Vargo, who gave me, we talked about, he gave me a chance. I mean, and Lillian Rosanka.
Oh,
this
good old
woman
Lillian.
rewrote the music for me so that I could sing it, because she just thought it was boring and I was a good singer, so she changed all the keys for me. Lillian, thank you so much. That was one of my first good roles too. Vargo, he had a lot of faith in me. What a great part. I mean, the kilts, oh my gosh, I talked Creaky into not wearing anything under his kilt one night, and then I proceeded during my number to go around and tell everybody, Creaky's got nothing. So the poor guy was dodging people, and everybody going by him was like flipping his skirt up. And oh, there were some great performers in that too. My dear friend Ellen Reed was Ellen Kawana at the time, just great voices. And Peter Ribery, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Were you in it?
I stage manager.
Oh, you were my stage manager. Oh my gosh, for Vargo all those years. That's a show. They have another picture. That's the other one that I'm on the bar, the picture. So sometimes when I come in, I stretch my arms to cover Dolly and Brigadoon. Because I remember myself, I was younger, my face looks great, but it's, all the other stuff, you know. That was a good show, Bridge of Doom, wow.
What are some of the other roles you've done here, since we were talking about different roles?
Since we're talking
Let's see, like I was saying, a lot of my roles and fun things I did a show called She Loves Me that so many people don't know about, but I had great little side roles, like the first customer. When I tell people, that's it, I didn't need a name to be excited about being in a show. If I got a solo part, for God's sakes, when I was in, what is June is Bustin' at all? That's the one about Billy Bigelow, what's that show? Carousel. When I did that show, I had one line that I said, and Ma's getting kittenish with Pat and sang, you'd have thought I had a whole solo. And there was a woman in that, this Bernadette Nolfi. She was a great singer, and she did When You Walk Through a Storm. I could still get goosebumps just thinking of that woman singing. I don't even have to hear it, and that was so many years ago. But I did love all the shows, Guys and Dolls. Oh my gosh, I did that 2 times here, and believe me, they had real gangsters. I mean, it was Dohar.
That was the right time for it.
Yeah, Dohar got all his buddies, and I swear I would and Bentley was cute. I remember during the run of that show, and he's like, just stay over here. Because he said, you don't need to go near them guys, because he didn't know what they were talking about, and they all back in that day went out and smoked cigars and cigarettes all around the building. But that show was fabulous too, and once again, Ray Dohar, Dana Snyder as the two leads, just, Adelaide and Nathan, they were fantastic. And like I said, the leading people don't even come to mind because they just stole the show, the comic leads. And I always said, I love this show, I love this show. I was only in the mission band every time I tried out for that show, but I didn't care, just to be on the sidelines and watch such fabulous performers. Of course, one of the biggest things I ever did here, and something I have to look at, is it was deja vu, was meeting Todd and doing Easy Street for the very first time. That's how my company got its name.
Yeah. In fact, that was what I wanted to get into next, was after you had been here for so many years and you and Todd started Easy Street, what prompted you at that particular point to branch off and do that?
Well, I'll tell you, nothing really prompted us. We did the show. I believe that's one year I remember because it was '82. I had come here to see the production of Camelot that David Gendry had directed. And Todd, that was his first show. And he was none other than Lancelot. And nobody loves himself more, especially back in that day, than Todd Hancock in Chainmail. So I'm up in the balcony, I'll never forget it. And David just was looking at me when he first came out, Camelot. And David looked at me and he said, I saw you just sit up in your seat like, what is this? And David looked at me and gave me the wink. Well, sure enough, that wink years later turned into, he and I in '82, we brought back Annie that summer, and I remember speaking to Bentley because it had been on the season and they wanted to bring it back, and he talked to us because we were going to take this road trip to California and go for it. And Todd's young enthusiasm gave me the courage even to tell my parents, I'm going on a road trip, It just wasn't our style at my house to go anywhere. And he just gave me that courage to do it. And I'm saying, I'm doing this. I'm going to go do this. To go, and then when we came back in '84, because we ended up living in California for a couple years, when we came back, we really wanted to work together. And Doc Holsopple cast us in Noises Off.
Okay.
Fun show.
Yeah.
And we literally came home to do it. And I just loved it. And we loved working together so much that we were like, if we go try out for things and we're not in it, or you're in that and you're in that, it was falling flat. Well, Todd, let's start our own show. And like I said, it was like the Little Rascals. That's why it was Easy Street, Little Rascals after the fact, because it was just like, let's put on a show.
Yeah.
And we grabbed all kinds of stuff from his mom's house and my house, and we put together that little combination show called 429 Miles Off Broadway that we did in the original Oakland Center, which was on Mahoning Avenue next to Star Supply, which is now our home. It's so deja vu-ish when I go in there and remember this was where I did our first try at trying to do our own thing. And now with seeing so many young people that I've mentored doing their own thing now too, sometimes it gets frustrating, like, because how many places can people go to see theater? But I keep telling Todd, what if people would have felt that way when we started?
Yeah, that's true.
And he goes, well, it was different then. Nobody went downtown to see shows. Now I said, I know. So we were the catalyst, but you have to just take a deep breath and just remember, you inspired people to do this, and you made these young people that are able to do it now say, I could do it if they can do it. And what's better than that? There's nothing better than that,
Well, you mentioned the kids that you work with, and you have had so many kids come through Easy Street, and you guys have been instrumental in their step forward into professional careers. Now that's got to be something really gratifying to both of you.
The kids who are doing it, because they just make me so proud. Just recently we had two of our stars come home, Alicia Shoetrump at the time for us, and now she's Alicia Jordan, and Natalia Hagen came home to do Guys and Dolls for us with the Youngstown Symphony just a few weeks ago. They're both on Broadway. They're both touring with big shows. They're both going to get Tonys, and they're going to thank me. You know what I mean? That's what I keep saying. I keep telling them, please. We've got John Scacchetti. young dancer who's doing it and teaching right on Broadway. You know, he's teaching dance and doing lots of parts in theater. Never had that big break yet, but he doesn't really need the big break, he says, which I love. You know, it's not all about that, really. It's about doing what you love, and that's what he says. We got a young guy named Dominic Roberts who was in our shows that is on Broadway. I've got a couple of kids who are, Rosie Joe Nettie, for God's sakes, just got in this Yiddish version of Fiddler, and it's now going to go to Broadway. So this kid came up through our ranks, did stuff here with us, and she's doing it now. That is just, you have no idea. I mean, I just look at Facebook now. The main reason I love that social media is just to watch the people that I love
And what they're doing.
attaining that, you know. And for me, I never had the means or really, obviously, the real desire to push to that level, to go, or I would have done it. You know what I mean? I never had that confidence in myself, I don't think. And it's a lot of rejection.
Oh, yeah.
And these kids learned that too. They've learned that, I'm sure. I've got a couple of kids who aren't doing theater, but they're actually making music, songwriters out there. My niece, Tommy Smolko, kids that came up that are now doing music and doing what they love and doing what we mentored them to do. Pick something you love, make it a job, and do it, and be happy with that.
Well, kids get involved in so many things, especially today. But what is it about theater that gets them, kind of gives them a special excitement? What is it about that?
I'll tell you what. I think the real theater nerd kids today, they know more shows than I know, and there's so much new going on. I'm just like, I love the old classics, you know. I'm still a Les Mis. I just love that show. And these kids know titles I don't even have never heard of. I try to tell all the kids I work with that theater, community theater, builds what's in the inside. And if you're fortunate enough to work with fabulous people who love theater and come to the community theater, gosh, you're learning, you're getting a double star because you're to feed off of that. That's what I did. That's why I thank and hug so tightly these people who inspired me to continue doing what I love to do. Because without them, really, you're nothing. And I make sure that every child that comes through my door respects their parents for getting them there and respects the chance to change people's lives. Because whether you know it or not, when you're on stage, so many people in that audience are coming there just to forget about today.
Yeah.
Forget about the month, what's going on in their lives. And if you can make somebody escape that, oh my God, what, you know, that's like miraculous work, and that's what we do. That's what I try to tell them. That's the power you're going to have if you really enjoy what you're doing. And the minute this isn't fun, kids, we tell them, don't do it. It's got to be fun first. It has to be. Or why would you do that? Especially community theater, you know, when you're not making any money doing it. It's like, I used to look at people and think, oh, they got to be getting paid a lot. You know, these really good stars that did a lot. Look at somebody like Dick Kepley. Do you remember the night that George Mansour didn't show up for a performance of South Pacific?
I didn't see that show, but I've heard that story.
This was a great Bentley story, and he told me, I'll never forgive you for that. Because he came and told all of us, because poor Dick Kepley, whole first act of South Pacific, playing the goofy part and Lieutenant Cable with a hat on and the script in his hand, singing Younger Than Springtime. And I was one of the girls behind him. We're crying because we feel so bad. Intermission, George shows up. Bentley comes running up. Just get your out of here. And I was the youngest, of course, at the time still. And we're all there, and he goes, this is horrible. All of you have learned a lesson today. You don't do this in community theater. You let all of us down. And George just apologized. It was something like he was with a friend who really couldn't leave, kind of thing. Bentley said, it's no excuse. And he said, get out of here. We'll find someone else to do it. Everybody said they wouldn't go on. And I was the last one because I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to get kicked off, you know, I want to do this. And everyone's like, oh, well, we're not going back out there. And Bentley was just huffing and puffing. And then he goes, so all of you are going to do that? And I remember him just kind of slightly looking at me, and I just put my head down, and we're all like, nobody's going on. I just kept picturing poor Dick Kepley having to go out there, you know, and do the next scene because it was even worse. And I remember Bentley when I left that night, he goes, fine, go ahead, George. Go ahead out there. and he let them finish the show. I don't think he ever apologized or said anything positive to George from that day on, because I still see George and we talk about it. And all of us in Bentley, when I left there, he said something like, "Never gonna forgive you for that, kid." I felt so bad. I remember going in the car and telling my mom, because I was still in my teens, early teens, going, "Oh, I really screwed up today." And I told her what happened, and she goes, "Well, you just need to go in there and apologize and tell him." And so over the years, it got better, but I felt so bad I'd let him down. Right? Oh, my man.
You kind of have a unique perspective, having been at the Playhouse for a long time and now with Easy Street, so you can kind of look at everything on the outside. And the Playhouse has had its peaks and valleys and its good times and bad times. And it's changed a lot over the years. How would you gauge some of those changes between when you started here and where we are now?
You know, I never ever lost faith in this place, because I knew in these buildings, in the ghosts of theater, of the wonderful people that have gone through and that sat in the office and that sat at the piano, I knew that this community wouldn't let it. They just couldn't, you know. And I was happy that Todd and I, kind of as offspring from here, doing our thing, were able to, during a time when they were hurting, still have a place where people could go and say, "Oh, it'll be okay." And then we came back after the Uptown years closed and did a season here of the 3 musicals. Well, this was back when Joe Cortese was on the board, and we were good friends with him, and he kind of talked them into it, because they had brought in a guy, which I can't remember, to take things over. And so I don't think it was kind of like you're sharing an office, we're sharing an office, but we were just musicals, and they had said, "Oh, we'll just do this and we'll bring people." They're talking about taking out rows upstairs. Todd's like, "No, you're not," because we were going to kind of split monies that were made from Easy Street, because we were taking a year off of doing anything on our own and bringing all that. Of course, we did Annie, Music Man, 1 show for us, 1 show for them, and we did Into the Woods, which they thought, and it was in the worst time slot, that winter slot, which is like, really? And it's a show that the first act would be fine, but then you go into that second crazy act of everybody dying, and people are like, "What the heck just happened to this fairy tale?" So we had no idea that this Sondheim show would be so hard to sell, but somehow it sold, and all 3 musicals did well. But I'll tell you, at that time, it was kind of like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Just the people. And I think the people, through the years that they brought in, were where things went awry, because the performers and all of us that loved it were still available, but I think those people started feeling, you know, like they don't need us, they don't want us. The board members were, you know, all those things. When you have a board, it's so hard. You have to have, you know, so many people saying yes or no. But I never ever lost faith that it would come back, and was always willing to come back and do anything for fundraising or whatever when they asked us to do stuff. I mean, we sang Easy Street, that we learned here, we met here for years. Just like at every little party, they would call us, "Can you come and do this?" We did it at Powers a couple times before we even performed there. I never dreamt that the Playhouse would get so close to becoming just a memory when it did. But something, you know, just the magic of this place won over it. It won it over. And now, with the young people involved, James McClellan in particular, John Cox, just who I admire from all his abilities to just bring people back and to do the things they need to do. Think about the building before it collapses around you, those kind of things. Let's get serious here. You have to do that. And they've been able to now attract people that are going to keep it going for a long time, and I don't have to worry. You know, and I really believe that. And we're bringing up a group of young kids. I'm just like telling them, offer more. People are like, "Oh, don't you want them to be?" No, I don't do enough so that they can just be with us. I want them, I'm raising them, I'm bringing them up so they have opportunities. So any group that comes up and says, "Auditions for this," I'm like, go. I'm not the type, "Oh, if you do that show, you won't be in my show." That breeds just such negativity. I refuse anymore. And it took me, Jack, it took me a long time to be able to do that, because my nature is kind of like glass half full, whereas Todd was always full glass. So his like impression on me really started turning my life around. But it took 40 years, you know what I mean? Because really, so now I try to catch kids when I catch them in that mode, like, I'm never going to get a part. Snap out of it. Who cares? Do as much as you can. Believe me, you'll get one day. Because I said this, I thought the same thing.
Exactly.
But it'll happen, kid, because you have talent, you'll make it happen, you know? So I just hope that all these kids that we're bringing up through the ranks and all the theaters, that they have to just think of shows for people. Because Bentley was a master at that.
Oh, he was.
He looked at who he had. We got to do that show. We got to do that show. You know, and he really helped in that as the managing, and I think Jimmy does that too. He keeps in mind the talent they have, and that's from the pit to the person running the light board, who we have to do this. And make sure you have the people, you know, don't do a show that you can't cast. Then you're gonna, they've had some really good hits right now. They're bringing, you know, they bring in this guy from YSU, like Hullsupple used to come. I mean, when you include your university and bring people to the table who are teaching young people who will come and audition, it's not really, you know, it doesn't have to be really hard to think of that. You should be able to do that, and Bentley did that. He brought people to the table that were able to fill the seats. Putting it just bluntly, I mean, you want to use people who can make people come.
That's right.
You know.
Right. Now, as the Playhouse moves into closer to the 100th anniversary and begins the next 100 years, where would you like to see them go as they get past the 100-year milestone?
Wow. I would love to see them realize just the greatness, and I think the 100th, that number, will do it. And I'm so praying that I'm here, you know, because I think that number, I remember when it was 90 years, and that number meant a lot to me, because I was like, wow, that's an old community theater, and that's where you know, cut your teeth. That's where you fell in love with theater. And now, for 100 years, people have been coming here and doing stuff, or even they were down the street on Market or whatever, but this building and this love of theater, all these faces on the wall, and now the faces behind the bar and the faces who are ushering and giving their time, I just hope that they can continue to inspire young people, that the youth theater comes back huge, because that's the ticket, is inspiring more young people like I was at a young age. And I'm doing this because of this place, and that I'm so glad the two names in there now are in love with kids, and they want to do good things, and they're bringing in, the kids are loving it. The kids from my place that are coming over here to do theater are just like I was, you know, offering the classes. I remember doing classes back in the Moyer room back in the day, and just leaving and having my little book bag and feeling like that 3 hours, oh my gosh, I love this, I'm going to be a star, you know. That's, if they can keep inspiring them and keep doing good shows. I mean, you got to keep the quality up. Like, I just left from the Elephant Man. It's like, wow.
Yeah, it was a great show.
You know, the one you did, Osage. I mean, these dramas they're doing here, it upsets me that they can't fill it with a drama, because this community needs to see a good drama. Life is a drama, you know, but it's one you can leave and say, oh, that wasn't real. So, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh gosh, I just pray that they can fix this place up and let it survive, and the city help them, and they can bring to the table, like Bentley was able to find people who really believed in it, you know? And so many of those big people back in the day who were part of the board and the people who brought money and helped Bentley are just old and gone. So we need these young people to find them again.
Exactly.
And hopefully these people will step forward, and that and 100 years might make some of these people go, dang, they last 100 years. I need to get, you know what I mean? I need to get behind them.
Sure.
You know? And don't give up on the dream of this place, because it will, another young kid in the 100 years will be coming through that door that'll be just like me.
That's right.
Wanting to do this so bad. That's what my prayer is for this place.
Now, Youngstown has seen a lot of ups and downs itself.
Oh, yeah.
Most recently with the closing of Lordstown.
Right.
What do you see the future of the arts in general being in this area?
I have to believe in the part of me that's magic, that it can't crush us. Because on a day, this whole Lordstown and all the stores in the mall closing, all these people that spend money, That's what people don't get. That's why it trickles down and hurts everybody, because all these people are the ones who have the money to come and see shows. They're the people who stay in town because they work there and they have families that stay. Then if dad leaves, guess what? Mom and her family will leave to go be near their grandchildren. That's the frightening part for all of us, is that the economy is going to be tapped so greatly that nobody's going to want to go see shows. So I just feel like people have to grab onto that magic of theater is all about here, and let's keep the place that breeds that going. The arts need to be constantly alive, and I refuse to go to that place there. It's not going to be. I can't go there because it's my life, right? It's your life. We can't go there.
Exactly. Well, Maureen, I thank you.
Pleasure.
It's been great talking to you, and we will see you at Easy Street. And I want to thank you for joining us on this edition of On the Marquee, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.